Hey, friends. I haven't talked about the royal family in a while because, frankly, there is so much Gypsy Rose information that is still basically new to be gotten over whenever it comes to all the FOIAs coming out and that type of things. But I've been following, and I swear to God, Andrew and Fergie, just the way they just play in people's faces, in the public's faces, in the royal family's faces, is so annoying that I just had to make a video about it and put my thoughts out there because I want to know what y'all think, friends. So let's get into it. And frankly, as we're getting into it, I've got a few things to say about King Charles as well. Because holy hell, has he ever proved to be the airheaded ditherer that everyone thought he was going to be in the 90s? I was one of the people that defended Charles talking to plants and being into sustainability and going green, that type of thing, because that wasn't popular back in the day whenever he was talking about it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That'll be a great thing. Queen Elizabeth destructed her empire in order to create the Commonwealth, which is a voluntary organization. The countries that are in the Commonwealth don't have to be. Canada could leave the Commonwealth at any time. Other countries have, but usually the countries that are in the Commonwealth find benefit in staying over leaving. So I respect what she did there. There's a lot of things that I respect that she did. I can't say as much for her son. Word keeps coming from multiple sources that William is beyond fed up with his father's weakness. He wants his dad to go totally medieval on Andrew and exile him, basically. That's not a thing that I think they could do legally. I don't think they have that kind of powers anymore. But whenever it comes to within the family, making, some personal threats and stuff, I think they could personally be like, "You're in exile. You come back, these are the consequences," and throw out some stuff that he doesn't like. I'm not talking illegal, cruel, and unusual or anything like that, but there is word that William has sat down with Beatrice and Eugenie and said, "Listen, if you want to keep your titles, get your dad to get the fuck out of Royal Lodge." He's finding ways to put pressure on from the sound of it. And I think he's right. I can't defend a monarchy existing for any other reason than the fact that the majority of the country that they rule over wants their monarchy to exist. And that has been the case in Britain for centuries now. There have always been anti-monarchist, and I completely understand their point of view. I mean, I'm an American. We overthrew the monarchy way back hundreds of years ago, and it's impossible for me to imagine living in a country where it was actually some sort of legal requirement for me to curtsy to people like Fergie. No, not interested. I find the monarchy interesting as living history, and I like it when they do good, whenever they do good work with the power that they have, that they were accidentally born to at birth. I think that's great and worthy of covering positively. But yeah, they just play in our face with excess and ridiculousness. I think it should be called out, and I'm glad that I live in a country where I can. William seems like he is sensible and grounded enough to realize the Andrew is turning the tide of the British public opinion. He's turning the tide of the majority away from wanting a monarchy and supporting the monarchy being in existence. Clearly, as the heir, he doesn't want that to happen. He wants the monarchy to be maintained so that he can inherit it. And hopefully, we hope William won't turn into a villain, but hopefully, he will do good things whenever he does inherit it. We can hope. Like I've said, those divine accidents of birth are a weird thing for something with that much power to be based on, but at least Harry and Andrew weren't born as heirs. Now, it seems to me, just from my observation, that because of Charles cheating on Diana so blatantly all those years and then making Camilla queen, he will never be able to engender the kind of respect for himself that Queen Elizabeth had. Like, it's just never going to happen. He acted way too much a fool in the early days. Y'all remember him in the early days? And he was like, "Do you really expect me to be the first Prince of Wales who doesn't have a mistress?" He might not do illegal things like Andrew, but he's just as entitled, in my opinion. And frankly, I think Charles doesn't go harder on Andrew over the Epstein thing because he doesn't want his own Jimmy Savile friendship examined. And that's another thing. People wonder over and over why the royal family has allowed Fergie to get by with so many dumb scandals. It's because other senior royals have been caught in the same ones. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over that. The queen, she had very, very few missteps in her entire reign. Like I said, she destructed her own empire to create a voluntary commonwealth of nations from what had been the empire that she was born to reign over by, a royal accident of birth. She destructed that in order to make it more fair, in order to prevent the kind of world wars and machinations that were going on that saw her family in Russia get executed. She was related to the royals in Russia who were executed. So she had a very real sense of what could happen if the public turned on the monarchy. I feel like Charles grew up without that, and Andrew too. They grew up feeling like, well, this is all right. The queen knew better, and I feel like William does as well. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but that's just the feeling I'm getting, y'all. Let me know what you think in the comments. One of the queen's first missteps was the Aberfan disaster. Whenever she was first told about Aberfan, they told her, "You need to go see the people," and she's like, "But that's against protocol. It's not even what we do." And she hesitated. She realized later on, and she righted the course, and she showed up at Aberfan, and she comforted her people, and she recognized that it was a mistake to not go immediately. So whenever she makes the mistake, she would just turn the car around, right the course. She did the same with Diana's death. When Diana died, the queen's initial instinct, which wasn't, in my opinion, wrong or bad in the immediate aftermath days, was to just focus on William and Harry, stay at Balmoral and just focus on William and Harry. They just lost their mother in a horrific way. That is not wrong or bad. However, the queen did realize eventually that the public needed her to acknowledge the people's princess, to acknowledge their mourning. And she did. She righted the course. She come back to London, lowered the Union Jack to half staff over Buckingham Palace. She addressed the people. She made it right. She fixed it. In my opinion, the queen's big mistake, the one that I don't I don't really find any justification for, is always believing in defending Andrew. I feel like her palace machine had to have given her evidence of Andrew's actual activities. I know he's always denied guilt. I don't believe it. I'm American. We can voice our opinion of free speech. We don't have to defer to born royalty. I don't believe him. I think he's guilty as sin. And he's lied enough. I don't understand why anyone's believing him. And the only justification and forgiveness there can be for the queen is realizing that in her old age as a mother, she simply could not face it. She had cancer, she was dying, but I think she should have faced it. I do. It's an area where I find it hard to have any sympathy or justification or forgiveness for the queen in that. She should have, in my opinion, done something about Andrew, even if it was just cutting him off from her privileges. Actually cutting him off, not just having him make a statement that he was not going to use his HRH title. And then we know that he actually did, just like Meghan Markle. He actually did. Fergie shared a social media post on one of the anniversaries of the Falklands War that she had Andrew write about his time there. And knowing that this was going out to the public, he signed it off HRH, the Duke of York. According to the Queen's 2019, pronouncement after his disastrous Newsnight interview, according to the queen, he wasn't allowed to use that anymore. That was his big punishment. He was obviously still using it, and he didn't give a shit about using it in the public. He played in everybody's faces and in the queen's too. And she let him get by with it. The big punishment on Harry and Meghan for running around acting like Fergie, going to Oprah and all this stuff was they're not allowed to use their HRH and titles anymore. Well, we know that just like Andrew, Meghan did. Jamie Kern Lima showed that little basket of 2 pints of ice cream that Meghan sent, and it had a card that said, "From HRH, the Duchess of Sussex." And you know damn well, Meghan Markle knew that there was no way that Jamie Kern Lima wouldn't at some point in a social media post, in her podcast or whatever, show that. Just playing in their face. The little, rudimentary show punishment was nothing. They all continue using those titles in private and to certain extent in public too, because both Meghan and Andrew knew that their little HRH writing was going to go on social media. in my opinion. So back to Andrew and Sarah, I know a lot of people who, like I said, haven't followed the royal family for decades like I have, wonder how are just now learning like the extent of Sarah's bad behavior, even beyond the Epstein stuff, and wonder why in the world the royal family kept letting her come back and have a redemption arc. Do y'all remember in 2010 when Sarah was videoed by a fake Sheik doing a sting operation? And he videoed her. She sounded pretty drunk in the video, trying to sell access to Andrew for 500,000 pounds. Everyone's like, wow, why didn't the royal family come down hard on her for that? She was already living with Andrew in Royal Lodge again at that point, even though they'd been divorced for years. She's living on crown property estates, videotaped, trying to sell access to her royal ex husband, to a fake sheikh, a sting operator. Well, the reason why is because Edward's wife had already been caught by the fake sheikh 9 years earlier in 2001. Sophie, at that time, wasn't a full time working royal. Edward is Charles and Andrew's other brother, the other younger brother. He's best known as the creator and producer of It's a Royal Knockout.
His Royal Highness, the tantalizingly eligible Prince
Steady Eddie at the ready. Yeah.
Coaxing courage.
And he left the military because he was more interested in theater. I don't disapprove. I love theater. But he had that royal entitlement where it just didn't work out that well. But anyway, we're not talking about Eddie. We're talking about his wife, Sophie. So from 1996 on, Sophie was not a working royal and she had her own PR firm. And in 2001, she fell victim to the fake sheikh. He videotaped her just talking trash about the British government, about the then Prime Minister, Tony Blair, and about other members of the royal family. And it was exposed. Everybody wondered, why, what the royal family was going to do. Were Sophie and Ed were going to be pushed out? What they did was the next year in 2002, they brought her in as a full time working royal. It seems that their opinion was okay, her and Edward are solid. Sophie's not going anywhere. So we need to take her out of the business realm so she won't be trying to make deals to make money with her PR firm and likely to fall prey to people doing this. And it was also investigated a little bit that she was in that video using her royal connections for commercial gain, which is supposed to be forbidden. So yeah, they fixed that by just making her a full-time working royal, and she wasn't yet a duchess at that time. They kept elevating her. She is now. So 9 years later, Sarah falls victim to the very same fake sheikh being dumb as hell, trying to sell access to Andrew. What were they going to do? Suddenly come down with a real hard line on her and look super dumb when their reaction to the same thing happening to Edward's wife, Sophie, was to just elevate and elevate and elevate her? They put themselves in a rock and a hard place there by doing dumb shit, frankly, in my opinion. Now, Prince Philip, when he was alive, he had a backbone. He was often very wrong and offensive on many, many things, but he wasn't wishy washy and he forbade Fergie from being in his presence. She was allowed to live at Royal Lodge with Andrew, but she wasn't allowed to come in any royal residence where Philip was at that moment. Like it was a big deal. He wasn't like Charles. That's probably why him and Charles didn't get along and Charles didn't have much fathering, but it's another subject. Now, Philip's absolute disdain of Fergie goes back to the toe sucking incident. I'm sure we all know about the toe sucking incident where Fergie was with some dude, her financial advisor, in the south of France, and Fergie was sun and topless and he was sucking her toes. That incident was made public and splashed all over the newspapers on August 9th, 1992. Apparently, Fergie was actually staying with the royal family. They were all in residence in the same castle together at that moment. She comes down to breakfast and they're all staring at pictures of her getting her toes sucked topless by John Bryant on the newspaper at the breakfast table. There are a few different versions of how it went down. That's the most popular story. We're going with that. And Fergie was escorted off the property dramatically, had to take the girls and leave. And whenever she got to a private house that she owned to take refuge, there were reporters everywhere, apparently. And she had to get a policeman's help to get the gate open so she could get in. There was quite a bit of royal backlash then because they could. Nothing like that had quite happened in recent times, not since Princess Margaret's antics whenever she was younger had there been that kind of scandal in recent times. But that what could not last for long because literally weeks later, on August 23rd, 1992, the Squidgeygate tapes were released. Princess Diana was having an affair with a man named James Gilby, and they had been recorded by someone. Someone recorded their phone call, and he liked to, they were very cringe. And his name for Diana was Squidgy or Squidge. I have no idea why. I don't want to know. It's weird. So even though, Prince Philip had a backbone and he never backed down about Fergie, the rest of them felt kind of like, well, how can we be too hard on her at this point over that picture whenever all this just came out about Diana? Well, then just a few months later, January 1993, Charles's Camillagate tapes come out. Someone recorded him and Camilla on the phone. And if you don't know about that one, oh Lord, you're in for a ride. Buckle up, my friends. Charles told Camilla in the call he wished he could live inside her trousers, to which Camilla replied, "Oh, you want to come back as a pair of knickers?" And Charles said, or God forbid, a Tampax. He said, "Just my luck to be chucked down the lavatory and forever swirling about." And Camilla said, "Oh, perhaps you could come back as a whole box and then just you over and over again." So this is just a few months after Fergie's toe sucking incident. So again, they had no moral clout at that point to even begin to try and act to the public like what Fergie did was so bad and different than Charles and Diana's incidents and Camilla, who is now queen. Because just as much as Charles and Camilla's conversation and Diana and James Gilby's conversations were private conversations that were never meant to be seen, Fergie's toe sucking moment was also a private moment, never meant to be seen. A photographer happened to get the shot. Just like with those recorded phone calls, some whatever happened to pick up the call on their recording equipment. They had antennas and stuff that were popular in the 80s and 90s. To me, one of the bigger deals is the fact that based on Andrew Lowney's reportings, Fergie was one of the most wasteful of all the royals, which is wild because she's not even born to it. Like she was born to an aristocratic family, but it sounds like her head got really swelled and turned by a duchess title and being married to the queen's son. They said she would demand of the servants every night that they cook and prepare a whole side of beef, a leg of lamb, and chicken for just her, Beatrice, and Eugenie. And half the time, her and the girls would sit around eating potato chips and it would go to waste. And she wouldn't allow it to be like packed away, kept cold for the next day so it wouldn't go to waste. Maybe the servants eat it or whatever. No, no, no. Had to just have this medieval sideboard banquet set out for her and the girls that they didn't even eat half the time. And it had to just go to rut because they're royal. I guess that was the only reason. Now, Charles has some weird habits. Like one thing is his breakfast plums, but his weird habits are not wasteful. The queen was known to eat cereal for breakfast out of a Tupperware bowl. And Charles, one of the former royal chefs, has spilled some of the fun beans, like nothing crazy, but just fun little gossip. Like he shared that Charles likes two plums with juice every breakfast, but he only eats one plum and then he sends the second one back. So one morning, this guy finally thought, yeah, I'm just going to send him one plum. He only ever eats one plum. Well, it comes back with this very polite note from Charles that, please, may I have another with it, a second one. So he sends the second plum. Charles eats it and sends the one back. Like, and they put it back in the jar for the next day. Like no one knows what the hell he does with that one extra plum that he never eats, but he's not wasting it. That's for damn sure. So odd. Now, on the note of Beatrice and Eugenie, I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, well, they shouldn't be held responsible for the sins of their parents. And they shouldn't. They're not responsible for anything that Sarah and Andrew did that they weren't involved in. But we know Beatrice and Eugenie, they were adult women. Okay, they were adult women whenever Sarah decided to take them with her going to see Epstein to celebrate his release from prison for sex charges. They were adults. They could have said, "Oh, no, mom, we don't think that's proper. We're going to stay here." And, maybe eat a side of beef and a leg of lamb and a chicken or something. They had a lot of options to just say no because they were adults. And you can't tell me that Sarah Ferguson has the ability to order anyone in that family around. I just don't see it. Maybe I'll be proven super wrong. If y'all think I'm super wrong in the comments, let me know, friends. I want to hear it. But yeah, I don't see any justification for them going on that, and I don't see any way that they did not know what he was just getting out of prison for. So, no, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not holding them responsible for what Andrew and Sarah did. I'm holding them responsible for what they did. Beatrice and Eugenie chose to be around Epstein too. Why was it? Did they like the money? Did they know that he was funding most of their parents' lifestyle? I don't know, but I don't think they're innocent. I do think they should be held responsible just for what they did, and I think more of what they did is gonna come out personally. What do y'all think, friends? We're hearing some sourced rumors that Prince William isn't having any mercy on them, that apparently he has communicated to them, "Listen, you wanna keep your titles? You wanna keep your privileges? Get your dad to get the fuck out of Royal Lodge. Handle this." So it sounds like William, he's using the options that he has to try and make something happen. I don't think he's gonna be a Charles. I think he's gonna do some actual modernizing. We've heard from different inside palace sources that William finds, like the Knight of the Garter robes and all that stuff that are very medieval looking and fancy that Andrew and Charles love getting dressed up in. William doesn't like that. He thinks that it makes him look ridiculous and fosters anti-monarchy sentiment. He wants to modernize. And I think that Charles is making a mess of things, and William may not have a monarchy to modernize if Charles keeps going the way he's going. So, what do y'all think, friends? Do you think I'm right, way off, reaching? Let me know in the comments. Have a good day. So,